So you're just vibing in medieval France, minding your own business when suddenly the Pope decides your entire region is crawling with heretics. That's exactly what happened to Raymond VI of Toulouse between 1209 and 1229 in Languedoc, also called Occitania, under Pope Innocent III. The papacy had been getting increasingly annoyed about religious dissent in the region for years, but when a papal legate named Pierre de Castelnau got murdered in 1208, that was the spark that lit the fuse. One day Raymond's ruling his chill kingdom where Catholics and Cathars get along just fine. The next day he's excommunicated and there's literally a crusade coming for his head. I mean, imagine getting cancelled so hard that the Pope sends an actual army to delete you from existence. This crusade would produce a massacre that shocked even medieval Europe and create a bureaucratic nightmare that lasted for generations. But what exactly made the Pope so absolutely triggered? You know how some people get triggered by literally everything? Well, Pope Innocent III was basically the medieval version of that person on Twitter who reports everyone. This guy was a lawyer with big ambitions for papal authority and couldn't handle anyone disagreeing with the Church's control over society. Raymond VI is just chilling in Toulouse where Catholics and Cathars are getting along fine. They're sharing meals and probably arguing about whose god is cooler over dinner. The Cathars think the material world is evil and only spiritual stuff matters. Catholics think that's weird, but whatever, they still pass the bread. Everyone's living their best medieval life until the Pope decides to lose his mind. Then papal legate Pierre de Castelnau gets murdered in January 1208, allegedly by one of Raymond's vassals. The Pope holds Raymond politically responsible even though the guy wasn't even there. I mean, apparently being in charge means you're responsible for every random murder in your territory. That's like blaming the mayor every time someone gets mugged. Innocent excommunicates Raymond and releases his subjects from their oaths of loyalty. The Pope doesn't stop there though. In 1209 he literally declares a crusade against his own people. He's offering the same indulgences as fighting Muslims in the Holy Land and promising the lands of defeated barons to northern nobles who join up. Imagine getting so mad at your neighbor that you offer eternal paradise and free real estate to anyone who burns down their house. That's some next level pettiness right there. The Pope basically weaponizes Christianity itself. He's turning love thy neighbor into kill thy neighbor if they're heretics. What made this even more savage is that the crusading forces frequently couldn't tell Catholics from Cathars anyway. The papal legate's reported line "kill them all, God will know his own" is probably made up by later chroniclers, but it captures how brutal some of these sieges got. This wasn't about saving souls anymore. It was about power and control with a side of land grabbing. The Cathars were peaceful people who wouldn't even kill animals, but somehow they're dangerous enough to justify what some modern scholars call genocidal warfare, though others dispute that label. What made the Pope so triggered by some peaceful religious folks that he launched a crusade in his own backyard? It wasn't really about religion at all. It was about crushing regional independence and grabbing territory. Southern France was getting too independent and the Cathars were just a convenient excuse. And when those northern French crusaders finally showed up in 1209, they were ready to turn holy war into something that would shock even medieval Europe. The first target was Béziers in July 1209, and these crusaders were basically foaming at the mouth for some holy violence. They've been promised heaven for killing heretics, so they're ready to earn their salvation the hard way. Picture thousands of armed religious fanatics who think murder equals paradise points. When someone asks how to tell Catholics from Cathars during the massacre, the papal legate Arnaud Amalric allegedly says, "Kill them all, God will know his own." This quote was reported in later chronicles and is probably apocryphal, but whether he actually said that or not, that's exactly what they did. They slaughtered everyone in the city, Catholics and Cathars alike, men, women, children, priests, whoever. If you were breathing in Béziers that day, you were done. Contemporary Crusader reports claimed they killed nearly 20,000 people in one day, though modern historians consider that number exaggerated. Still, the massacre was massive and many civilians died. That's like wiping out a small city because you can't be bothered to check IDs. These weren't soldiers either, just regular people trying to live their lives. Then they moved on to Carcassonne in mid-August like they're playing some twisted medieval video game. They captured Raymond Roger Trencavel and basically started speedrunning conquest. The guy was young, he tried to negotiate and they just threw him in prison where he died under mysterious circumstances a few months later. I mean, what's the point of talking when you can just take everything by force? At Minerve in 1210 they cut off the water supply and laid siege for months. When about 40 Cathar prefects refused to convert, they just burned them all alive in one go. Some reportedly entered the flames voluntarily rather than renounce their beliefs. Imagine watching people choose death over changing their religious views. That's some serious commitment right there. I mean, these weren't even military targets half the time. They were just regular people who happened to believe slightly different things about Jesus. The Crusaders turned siege warfare into a terror campaign. They used starvation and mass execution as their main strategies. What actually went down during these sieges became the blueprint for systematic conquest disguised as holy mission. Through it all, Raymond VI is watching his entire world get systematically destroyed by people claiming to serve the Prince of Peace. But here's the thing about Raymond VI himself. Guy was basically speedrunning political self-destruction on an epic scale. Imagine getting owned so hard by the medieval church that you become the poster child for how not to handle papal politics. Raymond VI starts this whole mess as a powerful count with serious influence across southern France. The guy controls major trade routes and has alliances with other nobles. But every single move he makes just digs him deeper into this nightmare. It's like watching someone fail upwards, except they're failing downwards into complete ruin. First, he gets excommunicated in 1207 because some papal legate gets murdered on his territory. Then he tries to make peace and does public penance at Saint-Gilles in 1209, which temporarily gets him reconciled with the church. You know what happens next? The papal legates decide his reconciliation isn't good enough, and he gets excommunicated again like it's some kind of sick joke the Pope is playing on him. The guy literally cannot win no matter what he does. When he fights back against the Crusaders, he's labeled a heretic rebel who deserves everything coming to him. When he submits and tries to negotiate, they just demand more humiliating concessions and take more of his land anyway. Plus, he's dealing with split loyalties among his own lords and Crusader troops that rotate in and out seasonally when their service obligations end. The real turning point comes at the Battle of Muret on September 12, 1213, when his ally Peter II of Aragon gets killed trying to help him out. This is a huge blow because Peter was actually a respected Catholic king who could have given Raymond some serious backup. With Peter dead, Raymond suddenly loses his most powerful supporter right when he needs help the most, and Montfort can finally consolidate his gains. By 1215, the Fourth Lateran Council officially recognizes Montfort's control over the conquered territories and basically hands Toulouse over to him. Raymond's watching his inheritance get legally stolen by church bureaucrats who've never even seen his lands. The church is using excommunication as a political weapon to justify conquest at every step. Then, in a dramatic twist, Simon de Montfort gets killed by a stone during the siege of Toulouse on June 25, 1218. Suddenly the momentum shifts, but the damage to Raymond's power is already done. Even when Raymond VII takes over after his dad dies, the same cycle just continues until the Treaty of Paris in 1229 finally ends the military phase. But here's the thing about military phases ending. Sometimes what comes after the armies leave is way worse than the war itself. The Inquisition made the Crusade look like amateur hour. This is basically the medieval version of Big Brother with judicial interrogations and way too much time on their hands. Pope Gregory IX institutionalized inquisitorial procedures in 1234. Deciding what this region really needs is some good old-fashioned systematic persecution. The military crusade was messy and expensive, but bureaucratic persecution, that's sustainable. You know what they say, why send expensive knights when you can send Dominican friars with clipboards and a license to investigate? The Inquisition doesn't just hunt heretics, though. They create detailed files on everyone, turning neighbors into informants and making trust a luxury no one can afford. Your best friend might be taking notes about what you said at dinner last week. Your own family could be reporting on your weird religious opinions. These Dominican inquisitors show up with their little notebooks, asking questions about your friends, your family, your beliefs, even what you had for dinner last Tuesday. They want to know who you hang out with, what books you read, if you ever said anything remotely suspicious about the church. I mean, these guys are basically medieval detectives, except instead of solving crimes, they're creating them. They've got this whole system worked out too. Most people get penances like wearing yellow crosses on their clothes, going on mandatory pilgrimages, or getting publicly scourged in front of the local church. Property confiscation is standard. The unlucky ones who refuse to recant get burned alive, but that's actually the minority. The worst part? They keep records of everything. Your grandkids might get investigated because of something you said decades ago. That filing system is more dangerous than any sword. Montségur becomes the perfect example of how military and judicial repression work together. After a siege from 1243 to 1244, over 200 Cathar prefects choose the pyre rather than renounce their beliefs on March 16, 1244. They call it the Field of the Burned, which tells you everything about medieval PR. Why did the Inquisition become scarier than the actual Crusade armies? Because armies leave, but paperwork is forever. You can hide from soldiers, You can't hide from documentation. The Treaty of Paris in 1229 had already placed Languedoc under tighter royal control, and the Inquisition finished the job by systematically dismantling the region's distinctive political autonomy and cultural independence. By the time they're done, the whole experiment in regional independence is basically over. The French crown emerged as the real winner, using religious warfare to expand royal control like never before. So Raymond VI started as a chill medieval ruler and ended up as a cautionary tale about what happens when you're caught between papal politics and royal ambition. The Treaty of Paris in 1229 brought Toulouse under direct royal control, marking a massive expansion of French centralized power. The Inquisition created a legal apparatus that outlasted the armies and kept grinding away at regional independence for decades. Some historians describe the Albigensian Crusade as an early example of ideologically motivated mass violence, while others dispute that characterization. But either way, these techniques got recycled for centuries afterward. Next time someone complains about government overreach, just remember the danger of mixing spiritual authority with political power. At least modern bureaucrats aren't promising eternal salvation to anyone who burns down your house.